town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect your soul. Let's have a bit of fun till I downfall. My love, if you feel like I do right now, don't say you're on the run to the other side, my love. side to side, yeah. Without you by my side, my side, my side. Without you by my side. One time from side to side. Peekaboo, I see you. Peekaboo, I see you. Looking at me, looking at you. Hold up, where you going? What you doing? Who you seeing? What you need? What you want? I said, without you by my side, my side, my side. Without you by my side. One time from side to side. Without you by my side, I can't go outside. Without you by my side, I can't go outside. Without you by my side, I can't go outside. One time from side to side.
Welcome in. On game one going on stream here in just a second. I, of course, enjoyed by Anti. Big matchup we have here. Playoffs right around the corner, and these are two teams that are currently slotted to seed into the postseason.
I mean, as far as I can tell, this is going to be a banger of a series. First seed versus second seed. True Minded Gaming's Death Knights versus the Akuma sides. As always, these two teams are here to deliver. We are not going to be getting Shade Slayer here. We are going to be getting Meta Shift instead, but that's not going to be changing the fact that we are going to be having some very, very fun back and forth games. I am hoping, right? I mean, sometimes really the difference between seed number one and seed number two is just seed number one significantly better, but other times it's really, really just a matter of who's better on the day. But right now, all technical difficulties aside, we're hoping to see some clean, clear gameplay.
Yeah, unfortunately, with technical difficulties, we it was a situation where stream one they thought we're gonna have to go onto the replay files, like some of you guys know. We didn't actually have to go on the replay files. We were able to get all the way through client side draft and stuff. So if I'm not mistaken, we can just go live to this game one from Summoner's Rift. We'll break down the champion matchups and everything from there. It's a little funky, but at least we're going and we're not waiting on a whole replay to get this series started.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes that's really all you can ask for. But either way, we're going to have to see how things go on the Rift. I'm sure that we've already gotten a little bit into game itself. So we just have to see what we've got in store for us here. So once again, it's a matter of a question of what these teams really want to be picking, what these teams really want to be focusing on, and what characters, what champions really is going to be what people are pivoting around right now. Once again, so few technical difficulties here and there. Going to try to get that all fixed up. But as Slayer and I were talking about before the broadcast, there's a few champions that, regardless of whether or not we've got pro play to watch, is very easy to point out and say, yeah, this one's busted. And those champions being champions like Corki.
Yeah, Corky is at a spot where he is just. It's if you were playing a lot of League during midsummer, I would say into like July, August, Corky was at a position. It was just you could play him bottom lane, you could play him mid lane, you could build him. Traditionally, you could build him towards like people were building him lethality with Hail of Blades. It was disgusting. Now you can kind of now you can kind of build him towards like the crit path I've seen from a couple players. I still think it's best to go traditional, but yeah, the point you're hammering home there, Anti, is that Corky's back to be very, very overpowered. Also, champions like Azir, who's kind of like a little bit meddling in the mid mage meta. That's an alliteration. That's a bit of a tongue twister. He's kind of risen back up. I know some people are fans of the Irelia buffs. It's really important also this week as well because yeah, there you go. Because
yeah, I mean,
the entire game is about to change like tomorrow. Like in maybe 6 hours, this entire game is going to shift to a completely different spot. So this is the last time these teams are going to play on 14/21.
Yeah, and speaking of Irelia buffs, that's one of the other things that are going to be changing in the next spot. The Irelia in this current patch, did technically, as far as Rise is concerned, get buffed, right? The Q has 10% more AD ratio, and you have a little bit more damage early on. It doesn't cost as much mana, and a little quality of life things back and forth. Next patch, I genuinely think Irelia is going to go from a decent, if you main the champion, to might want to be contesting this champion quite a bit because of how strong she is against the towers. But right now, we are not going to be seeing any Irelia whatsoever, but we're also not going to be seeing a standard lane composition. Is that a Kaisa mid?
Yeah, so we have Michael Ross. Shout out all you suits viewers. I am one of you. Is on the Kaisa mid, and then you have the Seraphine in the bottom lane. Still a meta where we're slowly working some AD carries back into traditional marksman roles, but a lot of teams still like to try and fit these mages in. Seraphine certainly is one of those, as the Death Knights are trying to stack up for a level 1 to punish a very
Oh.
weak early game Mundo. Andy Chef spots it out a bit late, but he does have that spell immune, and boy, did that come in clutch to make sure that Grand Entrance did not knock him up.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, Mundo passive is just gonna be doing it just fine. And Andy Chef is just gonna say, hey, you know what? That's cool and all. I got a little bit of my health taken out, but I'm Mundo. I'm gonna just do whatever I want. I'm gonna go where I please. And Mocha could be in trouble here.
Yeah, we saw Hwassel go in, knockups galore, but Hwassel's actually the one who just gets burned through. First blood over to Michael Ross on that Kaisa mid. Might get more here as they're going to get the flash knockup from Kenny to send Obaxki to the base. 2 kills to open up the Death Knights in a series where if they take it, they are the top of Group B.
Yeah, and just like that, the Death Knights striking first and going to absolutely take that one straight to the bank. A first blood onto your Urgot hand of a first blood onto your Kaisa and an early kill onto your Urgot as well is exactly where you want to be, especially because, you know, Urgot as a champion, if you cannot get to the point of relevancy against Mundo, is going to struggle quite a bit. So, you know, that early kill doing so much work.
I mean, it's a rough spot. I think this is... I'm really curious how we landed on a Mundo-Urgot matchup. We'll have to talk about that more, as level 1 has a lot of action in the bot side, both CC being used by Mitsuki and Osnapski, not any further, as they're too low level. But Urgot's certainly a champion where you're like, all right, you can't really let him get to level 14. He gets that power spike where his shotgun legs start firing. He's a weak champion you can punish weak. How did we get Urgot on the blue side against Mundo, who's even weaker than him in the early game? That question will be answered soon by Anti-Mitsuki, able to sneak out with the Rakan, even though the Ignite's over his head. And meta shift, though, here,
Meta
with the
shift.
Ixtal's impact is going to throw Mitsuki back to the Wolves, gets the root. One more auto will do it. Flash forward for the Sivir. Dredgeline eaten up by the Seraphine, but now it's crushing Rock that's very low, but he's going to turn it with a turret shot. How do the Death Knights end up with a kill there?
Crushing Rock just barely getting taken by that dredge line, just saying, Mitsuki, Mr. President, get down. I don't care that you're usually the support here. We're both essentially playing supports for the team and just playing to whoever needs it right now. But either way, that body block came in super clutch, along with that Guardian proc, just in time to make sure that the Death Knights continue to have so much of this early pressure on a team composition that honestly scales pretty dang well.
Without a doubt. And like we talked about, I mean, if we look at the states of these lanes, still going to be rough for Michael Ross, but he doesn't have the pressure of having to punish Hwassel too much now on this Silas. Can certainly get jumped on. Canny is in Candyland with this Urgot Mundo matchup. Not going to have to sweat anything. Mundo is not going to be able to threaten him. And then, like you talked about, the bottom lane, able to pick up an early kill and survive. Massive. But we're just going to keep skirmishing it out, it seems, as we got a 3v3 with Milk and Mocha trying to hold the line pretty close towards that Akuma Blade's turret. But cooldowns prevail. Nobody burning any summoners yet. Hwassel will get a flash just as I say that. Missed the abduct, though. Milk and Mocha able to dodge that one out. And with the ult channeled, should be enough to get him out. Meta shift goes in and does set up for a good dredge line. And they do punish Mitsuki, who tries to make sure his jungler survives. And it will cost him. Hwassel missing another abscond abduct. But Michael Ross has no way over the wall to try and grab that plasma stack. And his damage just isn't online enough yet to punish any of these low health members for Akuma Blades.
Yeah, and you can see Michael Ross is outputting quite a decent bit of this early damage, but at the same time, Mitsuki still at level 2, still incredibly squishy on that Rakan, just going to get punished up so much, so often here. Meanwhile, in the top side, it's just going to be a matter of farm v farm, the same way that we have seen the Udyr work out in the jungle. Milk and Mocha really just constantly looking for more ways to farm up, more ways to get farm leads in the jungle itself. But either way, it's honestly been a struggle to see whether or not he can actually turn this into much more of a lead, right? Usually when you have a champion farming up for level 6, it's not the champion that doesn't get an ultimate.
Yeah, exactly. Hit the nail on the head there. On the other side of the map, though, I got to give credit to Fluke, who is on this Sivir recognizing, hey, I'm into a Seraphine Rakan. There is like 0 kill threat here. So I'm going to immediately lock in the Cole and just try and build a CS lead. And that CS lead is what's kind of kept this gold lead a bit close at about 1,000. That is a kill's worth of gold over to Fluke. You could that he is able to grab with CS, and it's why, despite the fact Rushing Rock has that kill, our marksman quotation marks of this matchup are dead even in gold.
Yeah, I mean, Seraphine as a champion really just needs those levels in gold in order to scale up to the point where she can just help out the rest of the team here. But the ability to pick up a cull for the Sivir is one of the things that makes picking a marksman in that bot lane so effective, right? If you find yourself in a matchup where it's like, all right, I'm not up against a mage, there is no real kill pressure, I should be fine to just scale up here, you can just pick up a cull, you can pick up a pickaxe, and you're sitting on a decent chunk of AD, a decent chunk of healing, and on top of that, the added 180 gold essentially for free, and the only thing that you have to give up for it is your early game priority, which when you're Sivir, you're not exactly looking to fight to begin with, right? Sivir as a champion, we've seen so many years in a row. The classic 6-item power spike 80 carry. If there's an 80 carry in the game that wants to farm up as much as they can, Sivir is culprit number one.
It is honestly kind of underrated, how much damage, especially her bouncing boomerangs end up doing later in the game. It's one of those things where even if you're standing far back as a marksman, you're like, why am I 10% HP? It's because you got crit by 7 bouncing boomerangs on your tanks that just deliver them to you. So that's a great point, Anti, to make. To maybe give Akuma Blades a scaling option, because this does certainly feel like a game where it's going to be a battle of scaling, like you talked about, even though the Death Knights are able to take a lead with such passive lanes in a couple of spots.
Yeah, and speaking of passive lanes, you can see that Canny also looking to keep things relatively passive if possible, is what you would expect with the build, but it's actually getting very close to lethal as far as the health goes here. Metashift looking to make an in here, and Andy just making sure Canny doesn't have an opportunity.
No flash available. If not able to get close enough. Was spotted that both ults were used by Andy Chef and Kenny, and that is maybe why the Mundo was picked here in the matchup. The entire point of an Urgot's kit is to get the execution threshold on Fear Beyond Death, but maximum dosage is just a health steroid, so I'm actually going to eat my own words earlier. Andy Chef looking to counter the matchup purely ult for ult. Maybe have a jungle invade come across here. Milk and Mocha teaming up with Mitski to try and see if they can steal any camps. They don't know Metashift is nearby. Milk and Mocha will hop on the chickens and should actually be able to steal these away without Metashift even realizing.
Yeah, I mean, they don't know that Metashift is nearby for certain, but I'm pretty sure they've got a pretty good idea here. In the meantime, you can see Michael Ross just going to continue to try to keep as much pressure as possible, and we're getting a regank in the top lane.
Oh, there's the Ixtal's impact. Impale's available. Great combo from Metashift. Andy Chef is very low, trying to kite back, utilize his minions as spacing into Canny. One more auto will not find it. And the two tanks battle it out to knock Kenny down. Akuma Sabres starting to get rolling in the kill department, and they might look for more here with Milk and Mocha cornered in a 3 versus 1. Osnapski, great dredge line, but an even better unstoppable and flash combo from Milk and Mocha just to survive.
Yeah, and very slim margins there. And speaking of slim margins, Canny and Andy Chef had such little time left on either of their ultimates. If you look at their ultimate timers right now, they both have them available. If that was not the case, just, 10, 20 seconds ago in that gank, the Mundo would surely have been going down there, and it would just felt so much worse for the side of the Akuma Blades here. In the meantime, the Akuma Blades managed to pick themselves up a kill, managed to get themselves an opportunity to simply scale, and we're getting more trades once again, but I doubt that we're going to be seeing anything close to lethal.
It's the classic scenario, or I was trying to say experiment's not the right word, but the state with top laners is Michael Ross should be fine here while still can't get close enough. So many top lane matchups are just who can bait out the other one's ultimate before the real fight starts. And it's once again that again. But top lane is not the focus now with Milk and Mocha. Another great Ram stance to avoid getting CC'd and knocked up. So really toying with Akuma Sabres. The problem is Metashift all along probably wanted to just play for these grubs to try and make sure no mites are available on the map in game one.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, they're going to be looking to take this one away. 3 grubs to 3 grubs. I doubt we're going to be seeing any crazy sort of steals here. The dragon is coming up in a little bit over 40 seconds, so I would love to see the Death Knights try to make their way over, try to get a little bit of vision, but we're actually seeing a contest
Oh.
here.
Okamoka, he wants to get that one Void Mine, and he will. And it looks like Osnapsky with no mana and half HP is just going to leave Meta Shift in the pit. Luckily, he can just run right through the terrain and get out, but certainly making us casters eat our words. One might going to be available going forward for the Death Knights.
Yeah, one might available now, and it's honestly an interesting thing to note. Metashift did have the smite available, and was able to get the chickens back right there here, but in the end, mid lane has been a decent bit of suffering for Akuma's side here, as the Silas, while he is able to continually pick up gold and experience, not really at threat of actually dying against the Kaisa, has continually fallen behind in gold, in levels, in not necessarily so much as far as levels goes, but in terms of damage, it's been quite the struggle here, especially when the Death Knights as a whole are just revolving around this Kaisa, just saying, all right, Michael Ross, make sure to put us in your backpack and carry us over the finish line, because you are our sole damage here, right? With an essentially single damage composition on the Death Knight side, it's going to be pretty difficult if the Kaisa gets completely zoned out of these fights.
Such a tough spot to be in, especially as that low range AD carry. But Michael Ross maybe looking to show off his Kraken Slayer damage. Double Impale comes across from Metashift. The Encore going to hit one target. It is going to be Huasso who's stunned up, able to heal and flash himself out. But Michael Ross hunts him down with the Killer Instinct and knocks him down on one side of the fight, forcing Metashift to flash away. Michael Ross is untouched, and it's going to lead to the Death Knights wiping this fight. Sure, they didn't get Fluke and Metashift, but they got control of the river, control of the dragon, and control of the kill count once more.
Yeah, control of so many things, but on top of that, control of the game is what we would say if they manage to turn this fight into more of a lead there. We're seeing that the fight itself, while it does put some gold into the pockets of the Death Knights, it doesn't really turn into too much more, right? They're still losing out on the top lane place. They're still losing out on this kill. Never mind. Canny saying, what exactly are we losing out on? I cannot hear you over the sound of Mundo dying, but immediate aggression from the Cull Urgot paying off dividends. The turret plating not going to be going over to the side of Akuma, and instead the dragon is soon to be started up.
You talked about it earlier, Anti, how Michael Ross is correctly just such a big damage piece, but gotta give credit to the Death Knights, especially Crushing Rock and Canny, recognizing they are supplemental damage pieces in their own. Crushing Rock, a support that is building, AP damage, but it's only, half the battle, and then Canny, tank damage dealing Urgot. And if they're able to do enough damage to help Michael Ross over the hump of that damage problem, should put the Death Knights in a really good standing to try and take this game one. But I'm starting to sniff a win con that would be pretty helpful for a scaling team. Metashift starting up that second Drake, but Milkamoga, Mitski, and Crushing Rock have a bit of an idea about this. We're going to come over the Dragon pit. So they know the Dragon's being done, but I don't believe they know how low the health bar is, and they don't have mid-prio at all either, so it's going to be the Dragon stacking favor for the Akuma Sabres, who desperately need it.
Yeah, and right now you can see that it is going to be the Mountain Rift for the rest of the squad here, but who cares about the Mountain Rift?
Should be good.
Forced to burn the ulti to get on out of there. Michael Ross still uncontested in that mid lane. That tower is looking to get more and more pain just dished directly on top of that. But if Shelly can go down into a lane, the Death Knights could still be denied that first tower gold.
Really smart play here from Kenny. He's even playing away from his tower right now, knowing he is clearly on the weak side of the map. Interesting adaptation, though, from Andy Chef. He is going to teleport bot side to stop Crushing Rock from the push, and we are going to get a mid-game lane swap. I like this from Akuma Blades. It's what you really want to do with a Sivir comp, and they're going to use that Herald you were talking about, Anti, to virtually knock down the first turret and start to narrow the gold lead once more.
Yeah, it's one of those moments where, as I was saying, right, the Death Knights had a decent opportunity for themselves to try to pick up some tower damage, to try to pick up some gold. And there's that red turret going down in that mid lane, exactly what we were talking about. But in the top lane, once again, there is more of this Rift Herald being put to great use. A huge amount of tower damage coming through on that tier 2 here. But Mitsuki right now just walking up, trying to zone off the Death Knights as a whole here, just trying to say, all right, well, if you're going to walk on out of here, you either got to do it all together or completely and totally separate. There's none of this single file line out of here because you will completely get picked off. But in the end, nothing too crazy. The cull is fully complete, and Fluke is going straight on back to base, working on that second item. I do believe that that's almost certainly going to be a Navori Flicker Blades picked up second, as Sivir as a champion just benefits so much from the reduced cooldowns from that item. But in the end, the big question is, what exactly is it that Akuma needs in order to get back into the swing of things? You're falling behind in gold, you're falling behind in tempo, and you do not want to fall behind in terms of game control.
Well, I was going to say pick potential would certainly help them. Is On the Hunt is popped by Fluke. They're not able to chase down Milk and Mocha. Maybe, I know we didn't get to do too much draft analysis talking about what the win conditions are, so I guess we can do them here, Anti. But for me, I do feel like the Akuma Blades comp is a bit wonky in their composition. You do have a Sivir comp with a couple of tanks. That always screams front to backing, but the Silas for Hwasol and the fact that you're going into a Seraphine AP carry comp that certainly wants to deathball themselves, I'm curious how much value we're going to get out of the Silas. We certainly haven't seen too much of it just yet. As my God, does Andy Chef do disgusting amount of damage with that Heartsteel. But Milk and Mocha was laying a trap. He's got his trusty Seraphine nearby, who has to use Encore and the entire kit to try and burn through Andy Chef, who's having a tough time dropping. Now we have double teleports coming in from mid laner and top laner. Mediship flashes for the double impale, and they're able to pick off Milk and Mocha before Canny can swing the fight. One kill back for the Akuma Blades.
Yeah, and that was the teleport coming on in, doing so much work on the Sivir, right? It's just a matter of essentially every single champion that can reasonably take teleport, taking the teleport for themselves, making sure that you're always playing together as a team. You're always looking to make something happen here. But in the end, a large amount of that control came from the fact that Andy Chef was living for such a long time in that 1v2 scenario. In the meantime, Crushing Rock going to teleport over to the mid lane as Fluke is just going to continue to farm up, looking for those Flicker Blades, looking for that Siege, going to be able to get it, but in the end, it's just a matter of slowing the pace of the game down for the Akuma sides here. And Slayer, I know you were just talking about how the overall identity of this composition is a little bit questionable, right? A lot of Akuma has, you got the Sivir, you've got the meatballs in front, and the Silas is just kind of there. But at the very least, right, I am of the opinion that if you're picking Silas here without the craziest possible ultis, right? You have the Urgot ulti, you have the Seraphine ulti, you have a fight starting up on Snapsky.
Flashes away from Milk and Mocha, spotting a couple other members there. Mitsuki and Crushing Rock nearby. On the Hunt was used by Fluke, but got to be one of the most unimpactful ultimates in the game, so not too bad to lose that one. Certainly both teams stacking up for a pretty important Drake here. Third Drake is a spot that a lot of teams at every level play pretty harshly for, with one team stacking in favor 2-0.
Yeah, and you can see it right now. They're stacking up the AoE abilities here. Metashift just kind of walking up, trying to threaten an all in. But with the Encore in Hwasol's back pocket, I'm honestly going to be pretty surprised if the Death Knights truly try to contest this.
We will see. I think you made a great point there, Anti, about Silas's power if you have good ultimates to steal, and right on top, Hwasol flashes to get a double Encore down. Milk and Mocha very low. There's the real Encore back onto 3. Flash in for Mitsuki, gets a ton of huge charms as well, trying to mop up the fight. Michael Ross once again executes on the back line, and here come the Death Knights. Your Encore was nice, ours was better, screams Crushing Rock. 4-1 on the fight win.
Yeah, and Crushing Rock shows them the definition of an encore. All
Should
right,
be.
here we go. Fight starting up.
Oh yeah, they just burn right through Andy Shell's health bar. So the big tank is down. Encore number 1, not going to do too much. Just lock the Nautilus in place, but with the Nan advantage for the Death Knights, it's more than enough. And now Milk and Mocha is going to rush everybody else on the Akuma Blade side out of it. Fluke trying to kite back. Good impale, but the Flash from Kane trying to get on top of Fluke. Another killer instinct, and Michael Ross goes on a dominating spree. The Fear Beyond Death is going to chomp down onto Wassel as well. It is only Shift left up, and it's the Baron soon to be slain in the name of the Death Knights.
Yeah, and this is exactly what we were talking about earlier, Slayer, right? The Death Knights have a phenomenal Exodia Death Ball composition. As long as they got all 5 pieces available to them, they have so much power under their belt. So much of Akuma's team really just relies on the Silas stealing away one of 2 super impactful ultimates. Meanwhile, on the other hand, the Death Knights always have access to those same ultis. Right now, we got the teleports coming on in. Akuma wants to try to contest this, but it is far too late, not even just too little, to deal with the 5-man Baron take.
That third Drake taken by the Death Knights is starting to become even more impactful, as well as it really felt like getting a Mountain Soul on a comp with a Mundo, a Nautilus, and a Skarner could have been really powerful, with the Akuma Blades threatening to take control of this game. But now that is a fleeting hope, especially with the Baron in tow. But the fact that they can't even try an all-out fight win one fight to flip this game, you certainly feel like Akuma Blades are in a rough spot, down about 7,000 gold. And keep in mind, folks, if you're a Group B, stan, you know it, but Akuma Blades have only lost 1 actual game through 5 weeks of play here in the Vanquisher League, and they are on the brink of doubling that number.
Yeah, and one thing to remember, right? Sometimes when it comes to going into playoffs, a lot of the times teams will realize, all right, you know what? It's time for us to lock in. We've been using a lot of this season, for learning how to play together as a team, for figuring out what exactly it is that we can play that strong. But now we need to secure those high seeds for playoffs. So a team like the True Minded Gaming's Death Knights can definitely see just how strong this 5-man composition works when they're playing together at their fullest. But the big question is whether or not this is going to be a one-time fluke or if this is going to just continue with this much power early on. Fight starting up in the top lane. I doubt that they're really going to be able to catch the entirety of the team, but with the teleports forced out, it's not going to be too much more that the Death Knights can do. Akuma forced to back off of that top tower.
Drinking away to try and stop Baron power plays, though. Stack up his 4, push 1 lane, and threaten a tier 2. Does force, like you mentioned, the teleport out, and does stall out the mid and bot push waves that were in favor of Death Knights. But the one thing they didn't get to account for is the Mountain Drake, which was easily taken down by a Michael Ross and Mitski. Still some time on the Baron as well to try and get these waves in, but we haven't seen too many structures taken by DK just yet.
Yeah, not too many, but you can see right now, at the very least, another tier 2 going to be getting taken down by the Death Knights here. And once again, Michael Ross is going to continue to farm up with this Kaisa. There's just so little that we've been able to see Fluke do in terms of these team fights in comparison to how much stronger the Kaisa is on these early spikes, right? The triple evolved Kaisa, 6-0 and 6, 287 CS, most in the game. But who cares about CS? We're getting the full-on fights now.
Yeah, it's a flash impale to try and get Michael Ross by Metaship, but there's no damage behind it because the death ball from the Death Knights, pun intended, is just too much to bear right now. Anybody, tank, AD carry, or Silas tries to step up, they just shred through their health bars, and now they're trying to shred through an inhibitor turret, but we do have some good wave clear from Fluke that will be able to shut down at least the rest of this play from TMG DK.
Yeah, I mean, it does shut down the play onto the mid inhibitor, but the top tower is very quickly going down here. I said that this is a team composition of 5 pieces of Exodia, right? Where every single member, as long as they're together, can absolutely destroy the entirety of these team fights. But right now, the Death Knights are so far ahead that they don't even need all 5 pieces. If you got 4 pieces, you can always make up for that extra 5th man by just smacking them around with your wallet.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And, you know, it's also desperation kicking in for Akuma Blades. You see even though we didn't get to see the draft, looking at the composition, you understand that it's all about meta shift, getting big impales, the Hwassil engages, but you see from a lot of teams once you're behind, starting to struggle, some of those go buttons not really on the same page as their damage dealers, and meta shift trying to make the play on his own, but without a Hwassil or Fluke there, those big time impales are gonna find absolutely nothing. It feels like anti by this point in the game. It's the Death Knights messing up that will really open the door up for Akuma Blades.
Yeah, I mean, right now, it's really just a matter of hoping and praying, if you are an Akuma fan, that the Death Knights overstep, right? Just take one little step too far, just make one little extra mistake that that Akuma can capitalize on. But it's genuinely so difficult to see that coming in from a team of this caliber, right? This isn't just one of your run-of-the-mill ordinary teams. This is the 2nd seed coming on in, just looking to make sure that first seed belongs to them going into playoffs. But in the meantime, Fluke going to continue to clear away these mid waves. Sivir, just beautiful at just clearing out so many of these minion waves, denying so much power towards those mid tower pushes, but also making this Baron take so much more important. And all right, well, the Baron Mundo gonna be dropping down soon, if not for that flash. But in the end, what's nothing ventured, nothing gained.
It's always so fun to watch 2 scaling threats in the top lane, but scaling for such different reasons fight. Right there, because you saw it, right? You saw Canny, his entire kit, if he hits the Fear Beyond Death on top of that, is able to just shred through this Mundo. But then if Mundo survives, Andy Chef just pops maximum dosage. He's got a Warmogs, like he's full HP. So those 1v1s are going to be very intriguing. But like we talked about, it's the fact that Canny really doesn't have to play with the Death Knights for them to win so hard across the map. That's the real story.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, it's the big question is who is going to be taking this Baron, and this could be huge.
Pick. Yeah, Michael Ross clearing out wards by himself with 1,000 gold shutdown. Hwasa will happily take it, and that is the big piece of the composition for the Death Knights down. They're now scurrying to try to get to this Drake pit. Snapsky's going to go in for a dredge line onto Kenny. Mitsuki going to try and lock up the back line as the fight is split on both sides, but there's the big impale for Metashift. Fluke trying to step up, but his health bar is being drained by the Seraphine damage and Kenny's unrelentless pursuit. Even without their Titan of a Kaisa, the Death Knights are just too far ahead and too powerful as a stack for Akuma Blades to threaten, and with Andy Chef going down, it'll be their third ace of the game.
Yeah, the third ace of the game. What started off as a beautiful pick for the side of Akuma turned into the immediate Baron pivot gone far too far. In the end, it turned out to be a Schrodinger's catch where the ones dead in the box was actually the entirety of Akuma. The Baron is slowly going down here, but with a teleport available for Michael Ross, it should be more than simple to fully hone in on that one. But they're not even opting to throw the Kaisa in towards that Baron. Instead, just opting to slow things down a bit, make sure that Canny can get it, and walk on over towards that Mountain Drag. A third Mountain Drag looking for the soul point very soon would be absolutely devastating for the side of Akuma to have to deal with.
They do find a timer, though, where no resets were able to come across for the Death Knights, and they do get control of the pit first. We'll see if this time they decide not to turn off it and just go for the 50-50. Mocha does see how low the Baron Dragon is, though, and just flashes, smites it right away from Metashift to grab the third Mountain Drake, and now a big-time fight win. As the ultimates come out, the front line burns through from the Akuma Blades as their blade shatters in game number 1. Crushing Rock, godlike, the rest of the squad gonna barrel in the Baron minions towards the base, and at 32 minutes, this just might be done and dusted. Game 1 to the Death Knights.
Yeah, the Death Knights now going to be barreling it down the bot lane, the mid lane, just going to take as many towers and inhibitors as they can. Might not necessarily aim for the full-on end here, but in the meantime, it's just been so much structure damage on structure damage. And now, Nexus Tower number 1, Nexus Tower number 2, slowly going down here, but looking for the full-on fight before the Nexus actually falls.
Akuma Blades, they just don't have Fluke up yet. The main damage dealer is not going to be up until another 5 seconds, and that's just enough time for the TMG Death Knights to slam home game 1. 10-2 in game score, the Akuma Blades are, and they're now on the back foot of losing the top spot in Group B they've held all season long.
Respectable amount on their own here, and as always, this Rakan is something that you have to be so unbelievably terrified of dealing with. I mean, just the team-wide charm from the Encore versus the team-wide charm from the Rakan as well just makes things so difficult to play into.
Very difficult to play into indeed. Powerful game number 1 win. You can see some of the stats on your screen now. Michael Ross, obviously at the top of those damage charts on the Kaisa. But I am really intrigued to see where Akuma Blades go from here. Obviously, we didn't get to see the draft. We talked about a lot of powerful champions on the current patch. Didn't really get to see any of them in this game. So side selection will be available to Akuma Blades. Like we talked about, they were 10-1 in game score, 5-0 in series score going into this matchup. And they are now in a spot that I checked the stats. They have never been in before. They're going to have to climb back from an 0-1 deficit to see if they can keep that 6-0 spot locked up, nearly lock up the top seed from Group B going into the playoffs. But until that point, we're going to go to another short break here to try and set Game 2 draft up and see if we got ourselves a series on our hands. So I appreciated how patient everybody was at home getting into this stream. I promise you won't have to be as patient getting over to Game 2 draft. We'll see you there in just a couple.
my side, my side. Without you by my side. One time from side to side. Peekaboo, I see you, peekaboo, I see you. Looking at me, looking at you. Hold up, where you going? What you doing? Who you seeing? What you need? What you want? I said, without you by my side, my side, my side. Without you by my side. One time from side to side. Without you by my side, I can't go outside. Without you by my side, I can't go outside. Without you by my side, I can't go outside. One time from side to side. town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect your soul. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above the
Game number 2 on deck here. The True-Minded Gaming Death Knights taking on Akuma Blades as these two squads battle late for the top spot potentially in Group B. Seeding matters going into that postseason. And if you're a Death Knights fan, you are on cloud 9. Your superstar mid laner just balled out on Kaisa. Greatly executed comp from draft to game. If you're the Akuma Blades, though, how do you respond to this, to a spot that you have rarely, if not ever, been in this season?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this is one thing that I've said time and time again about these very high-performing teams during the regular season. You never know just how strong a team is until they lose, right? How they bounce back from a loss is what really shows you just how strong a team truly is. And, Akuma, as we saw there, lost out a lot in that early game, right? They got essentially, lost those first 2 kills. And on top of that, right, the first gank coming in from Metashift just did not work out, right? The Skarner came in, tried to make things happen, and ended up dying under tower. And there was just a lot of proactive plays trying to be made from the side of Akuma that just didn't quite pan out the way they wanted to. So the Death Knights just started to run away with it. They said, all right, you know what? That's cool. We've got that 5-man Exodia Death Ball composition. So we're just going to run straight in with 5 people. And it's going to work out fine just in the end. And it was very, very difficult for Akuma to actually stall things out to the point where Fluke could be relevant on that Sivir, despite the fact that the champion excels so much with that wave clear. It's going to be difficult to wave clear into the purple worm buff that's almost always active against the Death Knights.
Certainly. And it's going to have to be maybe a side swap scenario here. Like we talked about, we had a lot of technical difficulties getting on to this game number 1, getting into the series, actually, in general. So we didn't really get to see the full grasping, the full draft that went down, maybe what bands got selected, what the priorities actually were, even like what the counter picks looked like from the Akuma Blades. We'll get a much better picture here now. But if I have side selection on 1421, the last night of 1421, I am certainly forcing a blue side play here because there are so many champions on the recent patch that are at the very least, you're forcing teams to adjust their bans into your team because they have to take them away, or they'll just be first picked to do them.
Exactly. It's all about that blue side pick and actually forming your team rather than reacting to what it is that a team is building here. And one of the things that I will say helps you form your team is our sponsor, ProComps, right? ProComps, an active live drafting tool that just helps you pick whatever it is that's best for not only your team, but what's best against the opposing composition here. And it's something that's completely free, over 200,000 registered users. So why not go ahead and give it a shot? But either way, all things aside here, just as you were saying, Slayer, right? Blue side, very, very strong pick here, especially with champions like the Corki available. I'd love to see how Akuma fares on that blue side because we didn't really see the greatest of adaptation on the red side. It was a very standard composition filled with a few power picks here and there that we saw worked at Worlds, but didn't quite work out on the playing field here.
And I would wager, too, that as we get into that Game 2 draft, that maybe the Akuma Blades were caught off a bit by the fact that it might have been the Seraphine mid. Like the Silas looks really good into a Seraphine mid versus the Kaisa mid. So maybe that's where they're relying on the Silas. I also still held the grudge that Mundo isn't the best counter into an Urgot. You want to take a top laner that you can punish Urgot with early. That's not what Mundo could do. Those questions are all out the gate, though, because we are into Game 2 draft, and we do see Akuma Blades are on that blue side, and I am getting more and more nervous for the Death Knights with every ban that goes by that I don't see as Corki.
Yeah, I mean, no Corki ban spotted. Also going to be seeing that Nico ban once again. So it's going to just be these bans towards, from what I can tell, these potentially strong junglers here. But right now, I mean, you could make the argument that they're junglers, you can make the argument that they're mid laners. It's honestly a flex between those two, but there's another one of those quote unquote mid laners that could have been a possibility, as the Seraphine banned out by the Death Knights this time around here. So I'm guessing last time it was a takeaway pick, and the Smolder just slammed down. Blue side first pick, blind. What is it that the Death Knights take here? I'm almost certain you just slam a Vi Ari or something along the lines that has that point and click. Nocturne does a phenomenal job if you pair it with an Orianna, a Galio, right? Something to really just follow up on that one pick.
Great point there. Gotta combine. Yeah, why not go tried and true here? Nocturne Orianna, does not matter if this Smolder is in Hwassel's hands or Fluke's hands. He's going to be marked as this game goes on. I guess I would, I'll admit I didn't do the best research going into this series. I guess neither one of these mid laners are Corki players. Neither one of these AD carry players are Corki players, because that will certainly make sure we don't get a Corki from Akuma Blades. A Rilliant Soul and Smolder. No more dragons. I saw what you're doing there. Jarvan going to be locked in for Shade Slayer, if that is Shade Slayer. Do we have Shade Slayer back for game number 2?
I do believe that it is still meta shift. I mean, we're going to have to see how things actually play out in the game itself. But, Michael Ross likely not going to be the Kai'Sa player this time around. I'm almost certain that Kai'Sa is going to be going over to Frushing Rock. But as we've seen, Kai'Sa, very, very strong champion in the right hands. Very, very strong if you have enough gold, if you have enough experience. And on top of that, has the ability to dive directly into the backline to follow up with that Nocturne. You've just got a very strong dive composition already built up on the side of the Death Knights. Meanwhile, the side of Akuma has two champions that just want to farm and want very little else to do with much of anything. So the big question is, what do you take on Akuma to actually bridge yourself over from that early game to the later stages of the game? Because we've seen Death Knights actually have the ability to snowball things properly.
I like that analogy. I love using that one. The bridge champions. So I guess I'm glad we're on the same wavelength there. Definitely gonna need them, because something that is really integral for teams we talked about is execution of draft, and the Death Knights did that so well in game 1 that I'm confident they'll be able to use the power spike of their ultimates coming online to punish the Smolder and Aurelion Sol. Tom Ken's gonna be locked in. That is gonna be support. They get the Sion in the top lane. I want to get your opinion here, but I don't think we have much bridge champions going on here. We have some really good protection later, but this is a scary mid game if you're an Akuma Blades fan.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, as far as Akuma is concerned, I'm not liking this team composition too much. It's doubling down on exactly what we saw in game number 1, saying, all right, you know what? We are just the better team. We don't necessarily have the better champions with us right now. We have some particularly strong champions, and if we can get to the point where we can use the champions at their strongest points, then we have a very good composition on our hands, right? You have the Tahm Kench to deny that point and click depth charge. You have the Jarvan to try to bridge the early game gap. This is literally your single early game champion. You have the Sion, who's always going to be a threat in the side lane to those towers at the very least, to try to keep some sort of top laner away. But in the meantime, the Death Knight said, all right, well, we just have a push R Exodia composition, and if you do want to keep us in the side lane, we have Aatrox, one of Sion's hardest counters, as our pick here for Canny. So it's just really, really rough for the side of Akuma here if they're not just better. And honestly, doubling down this late into the game, maybe they say, you know what, we don't care if we're first or second seed for playoffs, but I don't know about just giving away that kind of confidence here, because game number 1 did not look too great.
If you're joining us late here, the stakes are, with officially some of the updates we've had from some of the other groups. We know the Drop Dead Gaming Vultures are 4-1, Riverdog Gaming is 3-3, so that does leave it up to, if the Death Knights can take this series, they'll move to 5-1, force Akuma Blades down to 5-1, and we have head-to-head tiebreaker as the first tiebreaker. So yeah, a game 2 win here would be the Death Knights not only pushing themselves up to the number 1 spot, they would also give themselves a better games record by 1 whole game. So a
One
lot at stakes
entire
here.
game.
One entire game. It'd be 10-3 versus 10-2 in favor of the Death Knights. So much on the line in one specific game of the regular season. This is what's fun about the road to the finish line that brings the postseason. And we're on to the Rift.
Yeah, we are onto the Rift here, but one thing to note is that we are not going to be getting the 5-man death ball level 1 crazy cheese that we saw in the first game, right? Instead, it's just going to be some very, very standard 5 points compositions between the two of them. Despite the fact that the Death Knights do have access to Nautilus, it is still just going to be Akuma walking in, trying to get a ward down if they have the ability to. But in the end, the big question here is whether or not Akuma are going to be able to keep the pace of the game as slow as possible, right? At the very least, Swag Flag got a little bit of damage off onto the Nocturne, so you're feeling a little bit good about that, but you have to keep the game going as slowly as possible if you're an Akuma fan. Meanwhile, the Death Knights say, all right, we don't really need to completely snowball the early, but if we can just get to mid game, we can hit R and blow things up before it ever gets close to that late game.
It was such a smart draft for some of the reasons you highlight. Anti-winning lanes towards the top side, and the way more powerful mid game, the way more aggressive bottom lane, and even in like a scaling battle, obviously the comp with Aurelion Sol and Smolder is gonna outscale, but Kaisa, Oriana, Aatrox, they don't just like fall off a cliff like, you know, maybe a Nocturne would, like a Lee Sin would, a Callista maybe. They're going to still be prominent players. So even if we reach this game to like early 30 minutes, it's not just going to be like a time bomb where at 30 minutes, oh boy, game's over, Akuma Blades win.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not just a ticking time bomb. It's not like you got a Kassadin inbound or something along those lines. It is just a matter of getting to the point where you can actually play the game if you're Akuma here. But one thing I will also note, right? So as you mentioned, these champions like Oriana, like the Kaisa, very much do scale into the late game. Obviously not quite as much as the Aurelion Sol or the Smolder, but the thing is, right, no matter how much later you get into the game, unless Akuma's Fluke is doing some crazy cooking, you're not really getting any tankier on these champions, right? So the later and later you get into the game, the more and more possibilities for the one-shot opportunities from the Oriana come in. But speaking of big opportunities, Flash burned away from Mitsuki, as the Tom Kench already managing to burn that with the first Abyssal Dive.
Saw Metashift skip Gromp towards the top side, also skips the Krugs just to show bot side and allow for Osnapski to go for that aggressive engage. Should allow for Milk and Mocha to comfortably claim maybe this first scuttle, and that's exactly what Metashift recognizes. He actually, I would believe, anticipates that the scuttle is already being taken. You can see pings are coming down. Milk and Mocha a bit slower to that play, but should just be that key flash taken away, at least for Mitsuki. Does have Hex Flash. Nautilus not too sad to lose his Flash as a support champion.
Yeah, I mean, Hex Flash always going to be very, very nice here. But one of the things also to remember is that it's not just a matter of Smolder versus Kaisa. It is also a matter of the Nautilus versus Tom Kench. Tom Kench kind of struggles in these early laning because of how much power the Nautilus Kaisa has as a combo, right? You get rooted up once, all of a sudden you've got so much more plasma to be dealing with than you might be used to. And speaking of that plasma, there's that big trade that we were just noting.
That Void Seeker land, yeah, Snapsuit really would be feeling the hurt at this current point. But we did forecast a bit of a slower early game. As much as we talked about the Death Knights having a lot more agency, they are very ult reliant. You want that killer instinct, you want the depth charge, and you obviously want the paranoia ball delivery system between Michael Ross and Milk and Mocha. Do see some slight farm leads starting to build. Not really by much, though. We haven't seen Andy Shep punish too much. It's the bot lane that's still getting punished as Osnapski gets lower and lower, trying to play on the edge of the gray health. But Mitsuki, a lot more healthier, and that wave is starting to push away from Fluke and Osnapski.
Yeah, usually when you see a Tom Kench fighting melee v melee and you do get that stun off, it turns into a winning trade, right? But with how strong of a duo this is with that Nautilus Kaisa, you can see that is honestly so much rougher than the Akuma blades might have been anticipating here. In the meantime, you know, Andy just doing the classic Scion thing, just proxying the wave or at least threatening the proxy and instead managing to pick up as much farm as possible. And oh
Oh,
my lord, First Blood just kind of comes through.
yeah. Well, Snapsky once again, just low health and not maybe respecting the dredge line there. Also very tough because Metashift was on a hover, so they had the man advantage of a real fight had broken out. But First Blood, like you mentioned, over to the Death Knights. Ult pop by Canny. Likes the 1v1 odds into Andy Chef, who does have his ult if he wants to use it as a bailout. Just going to tank up the damage and wait for that unstoppable form from Aatrox to tick away.
Yeah, and that's the big thing about playing top lane. Sometimes when you're leaning into the tanks, it's a matter of trying to keep your wits about you, right? Trying not to push a little bit too far there. The World Ender did get committed by that Aatrox, which means that you're not going to have it available to contest these grubs. You're not going to be able to actually make use of that early lane priority that you managed to pick up off of that. But in the end, Akuma are now going to be able to pick up those first 3 grubs, same as we saw in that last game for the blue side. But this time around, the blue side is not going to be the Death Knight. This is going to be Akuma. So if history is looking to repeat itself here, we might be getting the game number 3. I'm just calling it less than 7 minutes in, but if it does happen, call me Nostradamus or something.
We'll make sure. We'll sure to keep track of that. Certainly is big to grab those to shut down the Void stacking as there's a ward kill. That's why you got to lay down the wards. Vision score is important, folks. You just saw the Death Knight show it, setting up an easy kill onto Hwasol that will allow them to play for first Drake with ease.
Yeah, I mean, and there is a big change that we didn't quite see in that first game. At the very least, it is going to be a second kill going over to the Death Knights early, but that one was off of some pure vision play there. You know, a very strong opportunity for Michael Ross with the Shockwave, going to be able to set up quite a bit for the team there. But that kill going over to the Nocturne honestly works out super well for them, right? You just need the Nocturne at level 6. You need the Nocturne to have as much gold as possible here. And Orianna still going to be doing a decent bit of damage with that Shockwave regardless. So at the very least, threatening the ability to one-shot a carry even harder than usual is something that you cannot overstate.
This is a aggressive setup here. Hwasol does not have Fallen Star. Metashift does have Ultimate. Kenny, though, spots the dragon over the wall with that Breath of Light, just slamming him. World Ender flash available for Kenny, who's going to comfortably play this weak side. Just a show of force from Kenny, but he is going to lose out on a wave for that transgression.
Yeah, is going to be losing out on the wave. And when you're playing a champion like Aurelion Sol, you really want those waves. Like every single one of those matters to you so much. It's all about those stacks, all about getting to the point of comfortability here. But right now, it's not looking like stacking is the focus in the bot lane. It's simply objective number 1, survive.
Big wave coming in there, but Fluke has done a great job staying ahead in the CS numbers, stacking up the coal, stacking up the Q as well, pretty effectively so far. Bit of what we expected here from the early game for the Death Knights, but I wouldn't say, well, I guess the kill count doesn't speak too much towards the gold lead. 2,000 is a pretty comfortable spot for a team that is just now going to start playing their most confident League of Legends.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a decent start to begin with. Might not necessarily be the largest gold lead, as you did mention here, but as you can see, the Tahm Kench being able to sit in lane under half health doesn't necessarily bode well for Akuma. As far as I'm concerned as a player, if you're in that position, you're thinking to yourself, oh man, this is definitely a gank. There's no way that they're walking up like this for absolutely no reason whatsoever. And because of that, Metashift not going to be able to make use of that info. But in the end, just going to be walking back over to those chickens, just going to get as many things farmed up as possible. And the vision play from the Death Knights is just so good at spotting out meta shift here, but not just spotting out, but tracking meta shift across the entirety of the jungle.
That exact point is what has allowed Milk and Mocha to build up a sizable camp lead, and he actually has still more camps to take up here. So you can see up about, I think that's about 3 camps. He's up about over 600 gold alone. Obviously, the kill playing a big factor, but like you mentioned, the vision and the tracking of Metashift has gotten this combined effect of a farm lead for Milk and Mocha and zeros across the board for Metashift's score on a champion that is all about getting involved in lanes, especially as early as possible, even more so once the Cataclysm is available. But we do see him hop on these grubs. Metashift trying to burn them down. They have Snapsky over here, but there's the paranoia. They're just going to try and burn through Metashift. Devour does go down to save the Jarvan, but it gives River control back over to the 5 stack of the Death Knights as they have Michael Ross teleport in, uses the Shockwave on Snapsky. Those ults just trying to deter Akuma Blades from playing for the grubs, and they won't be able to even get a mite in this game. Split grubs, 3 apiece between the sides.
3 apiece between both sides, but the wallets are not looking equal here. Death Knights already managing to pull out with a bit of a lead here, but the question is whether or not they can turn this into too much more. We saw in game number 1 that they had the ability, they had the wherewithal to continue to snowball, but in the end, the Akuma team just did not have it within them to win a lot of those fights. So right now, the Death Knights just need to find their opportunities to get themselves not just in control, but in the lead by more than just a paltry sum of less than 2,000 gold.
We talked about it in the draft. This moment, about 11-ish minutes, maybe all the way to about 18 minutes, is when the Death Knights should be able to try and put themselves in victory position with this Orianna hitting first item, with Milk and Mocha hitting that first item, and the fact their Aatrox and Kai'Sa lanes are in pretty powerful spots. We get a stack check on the Smolder at about 90, 92, which I believe is a bit behind pace for Smolder stacking.
Yeah, a little bit behind pace for Smolder stacking is what I would say if you weren't being paired with a Tahm Kench, right? A champion that gives you more overall lane dominance would probably put you in a better position for those stacks. But as far as the lane assignments are concerned, I honestly don't hate this. But either way, Canny gonna be hating this gank.
Good flash, gets over the flag and drag. Doesn't have the World Ender yet. It's up in mere seconds. Can he stall out long enough? He's trying to heal through these big sweet spots. Gets the World Ender back up to try and turn the 2 versus 1. Meta shift, waiting on cooldowns on that flag and drag, but had to expend the flash just to get away from the might of Canny. And you got to give a win over to Canny, who survives the 1 versus 2, and you can see the Death Knights reaping the rewards on the other side of the map.
Yeah, Canny just doing so well, drawing all that pressure and not going to be going down. They're still even retaining that teleport, so going to be able to go back, not dropping so much in terms of plates, keeping things even up in that top lane, if not ahead. But in the end, this jungler, Milk and Mocha, just has so much control over the jungle. Just the last game that we saw, right, was out farming Metashift consistently while using the Udyr, a champion that doesn't really get so much value out of hitting level 6, out of hitting level 11. Nocturne, on the other hand, hitting level 6, hitting level 11, like hitting level 16, every single one of those ult rank points matters so much to this champion. So honestly, the power farming is paying out dividends for this jungler.
As that first item done, Archangel staff being stacked by Michael Ross as well. Interesting adaptation here from Canny. Not used to the Spear of Shojin first item on the Aatrox, but looking to index into the cooldowns nonetheless. And Kai'Sa is still doing a pretty good job chunking through Osnapsky's health bar. Hello, another 1 versus 2 here. Canny not going to have the World Ender available. No Cataclysm available. No ults available in this fight at all. And it's still going Canny's ways. He picks apart Metashift's health bar. And you know Sion does not have the damage to deal with Aatrox at this point. They're bringing over the Space Dragon to try and drop a Falling Star. And even that ultimate doesn't hit. Canny is the weak side top king of Game 2.
Yeah, everything and the kitchen sink and then some getting thrown directly at this Aatrox. World Ender not available, Flash not available, but kills also not available for the side of Akuma. The Death Knights are just managing to pull out ahead so much purely through their laning prowess, and it's just been working out so well for them. Canny on this Aatrox pick, just showing off just how much you have to be respecting this player.
And is it? I mean, would we call this starting to be desperation a bit here from Akuma Blades to try and knock down Kenny? Because all it's really gotten them is a gold lead accelerated. You can see the health bar on that mid lane turret too. It's less than 0.25%. Michael Ross has really been hammering it. So if you're meta shift, I feel like you got to start going towards these other lanes, and maybe that's what we're about to see. Is he is still in the fog of war, trying to path for a lane gank. Crushing Rock does have a lot available. They get the hook land on top of Fluke, and the Devourer barely going to make sure that the Dragon is able to survive. In comes the Nocturne. Milk and Mocha trying to burn through Menacio's health bar, and Crushing Rock able to pick up that kill. Fluke, barely alive, will escape, but it's another skirmish win for the Death Knights.
Yeah, beautiful stuff coming in from the Death Knights there. Crushing Rock just barely managed to react to the Abyssal Dive. Just super close with that ultimate, dodging away and going directly on top of Fluke there. But in the end, Osnapski with the ultimate was able to deny the actual kill directly onto that Smolder. But I was going to say, right, a lot of these ganks, right, whether it be towards the bot lane, whether it be towards the top lane, while we could argue, just smell of a little bit of, how do you call it, desperation. But in the end, right, a lot of the time when they are going to this top side, at the very least, they're not losing so many resources on the other side of the map. There was that one time there was traded for the dragon, but past that, it's mostly just been the tower damage. And at the very least, you have been able to force Canny to play a little bit more respectively in that top lane. Or so I would say, had we been, maybe 2, maybe 3 minutes ago. Right now, with that mid lane tower finally going down, the lane assignments are going to start to be broken apart. And DK is allowed to just roam across the map, make whatever it is that they want happen, and they're not just consigned to these specific spots that their junglers say, all right, well, I know that I can gank you if you're in this specific area. In the meantime, Hwasong could be in trouble here.
Let's not look for that hook, and to further elaborate on your point, which one of these junglers likes a more open map more? I think the audience can answer that question for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, Nocturne just has so much power, especially now at level 11. The rank 2 ultimate, so much range here. And you can see the Aatrox just going to continue to get a lot of vision in this top side, utilizing that vision plant. And if you just take a quick look at the vision as a whole, the Death Knights have so much vision across the map. Like, just look at this. Exactly where it is that they want to be. They want to be towards that dragon. They know exactly what their enemies are looking for, what they can do, and look at this response from the Death Knights.
They don't even need the Paranoia Ball combo yet. They wait for Osnapski to flash, try and use the Grey Health, but his health bar was far too low already. They teleport in Canny as well, but they've already rooted up and knocked down Fluke. The scaling baby dragon falls for the first time, and it's still a near perfect game for the Death Knights as they'll turn for a turret and potentially Mountain Soul point at 19 minutes, Anti.
Slayer, call me presumptuous, but I don't think that the we're just better strategy seems to be working, right? The Akuma team really picked a composition and said, all right, we are not going to lose early game. We are just going to scale up. It'll be fine. Nothing crazy will happen, and we'll just get to the late game and win the game. And Death Knight said, I bet. What if we just draft the same style of composition we did last time and slam you in the face the same exact way?
This game state brings up an interesting question. I actually want to kind of segue a little bit. Perfect game was a lot more easy to describe before Void Grubs came around. Is this not considered a perfect game because they split Void Grubs? I actually don't know the technicality on that, because that's the only thing the Akuma Blades have gotten this game is 3 Void Grubs.
I will say, unfortunately, perfect games are much harder nowadays due to the Void Grubs, but I still do believe that, as far as I'm concerned, if you do lose out on the Void Grubs, you do not have a perfect game, right? So,
Mhm.
one of the big things for perfect games at all times has always been a matter of pure unadulterated dominance, and what that dominance looks like depending on the season is going to be different. But now that the tower's gone down, there's really no question about it. Not quite a perfect game, but it's still a very dominant game nonetheless. 5 kills at 20 minutes to 0, 5,000 gold, almost, 4,000 gold, really, in the lead for the Death Knights here. But in the end, True Minded Gaming has got to be smiling at this one, because their Death Knights are playing this so well with so many advantages. And in that mid lane, look at that. What the hell?
Yeah, gold lead is getting worse and worse, and what I would argue needs to be factored in the gold lead is is 3 Drakes at 20 minutes as well. The stat buffs and the fact that they can consistently threaten a Mountain Soul for the rest of this game as it goes on, as early as 24 minutes in. We harped on how big the mid game would have to be for the Death Knights. So far, they have not disappointed yet as they try and knock down these last tier 1 outer turrets. And boy, you talk about the mid lane gold difference. You just saw it in pure damage numbers. Metashift limping away from a full Orianna combo.
Yeah, and in the meantime, Quasel's nowhere to be seen, just chilling out behind that bot lane tower, not even able to clear the wave away from Canny, not able to really threaten much of anything. But Metashift just struggling to try to get something going, right? Like we said, the only real playmaker on this squad, the only early game champion on this team available, but there's a play that could be made.
There is the CC chain you need. Hwassel sets it up. The extra CC comes in from Indie Chef, and on the board is Akuma Blades. The one of the champions, though, not sporting a shutdown, still gold, able to get 2 items and more over to Hwassel.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, gold is gold. Hwassel did have to burn that flash there, but in the end, the dragon coming up, the soul being available soon, and having more and more gold available on that super important Aurelion soul is very crucial here.
Very critical down the line if Akuma Blades want to try and make this already steeper comeback, given the scenario of the series score, and now what we're looking at in game number 2. Here's another Milk and Mocha attempt onto the Smolder. Fluke gets out, but you can't say the same for Osnapsky and Metashift. They don't even need to knock the Baby Dragon down. He's not strong enough yet. They could take whoever they get, and they just got the jungle support duo for Akuma Blades.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, Akuma's still very much in this, trying to make sure that they're not falling so far behind they can't make anything happen. But with Metashift gone, that Baron is absolutely going away, not going to be seen anywhere on this map except as the new clothes for the side of the Death Knights. The mom is called, but mom's not going to be able to do anything to stop these guys from playing the Xbox. It is still their turn. Akuma not going to be able to do much more than take these towers, take these objective bounties, and at the very least, gold is gold, but this might just turn into a full-on kill punish.
Yeah, good unstoppable onslaught timing there from Andy Chef. I thought it was going to be risky to go for that tier 2 with an Aurelion Soul and Scion. They are not known as turret demolishers, but tier 2 turrets are already valuable enough. With an objective bounty, it is even bigger, as they are starting to chip away at this gold lead. It's down to about 3.5k, but we're still not at the point where Smolder and Aurelion Soul can really start impacting the game state for Akuma Blades.
Yeah, I mean, right now, the big question is whether or not Akuma Blades can slow things down, right? Can still keep things from happening. But the one thing that you as a team want to do to try to avoid that is this team fight. Oh, hold on.
Remember, this is the Mountain Soul they're playing for. Shockwave down onto 2. They got Quassel, who goes into the Zhonya's as he dropped the huge Aurelion Soul ultimate, and it's going to stall out the Death Knights enough and allow them to turn with their 2 Space Dragons still up and kicking. We questioned if Akuma Blades could survive the mid-game, and it seems they have in droves. A triple kill over to Fluke and a stop on the Mountain Soul for the Death Knights.
Yeah, and that enormous Stars Descend from Hwassel just going across the entirety of the Death Knights just put them in such a precarious position, and all of a sudden all of the AoE starts to come in. The Cataclysm, the Q knockup from Andy Chef, just every single booger coming out of Smolder's nose, just doing so much work. And here we are, Elder Dragon at home coming into play. Welcome to the game, Smolder. Welcome to Relevancy. Fluke gets to play the game for the first time in 2 games.
Will it be enough? It certainly feels like the tides are turning for Akuma Blades. They've neutralized the gold lead and, more importantly, really neutralized the Baron play for the TMG Death Knights. They weren't able to even knock down a tier 2 turret yet by this point. One fight can do it, folks, in a game that is close enough, and feels like we have a brand new match on our hands, given the scenario.
Yeah, I would say a brand new match is on our hands here. But Slayer, one thing to note, right? A lot of these fights from the Death Knights have been started off by just bursting down the Tahm Kench, by bursting down the jungler, right? So much of it has been focused around these carries, right? Around the Aurelion Soul, around the Smolder, and oh my lord, here's another one of those fights.
Yeah, they're going for Osnapski again. This is a tankier Tahm Kench who's happy to eat up all this damage because look at the turn from Fluke. Mom, the Q damage, it's so much. Now Hwassel comes in with a fallen star to stun everybody up. Crushing Rock sure will finally get Osnapski, and Fluke might die under the turret. Kenny will find the trade. Maybe an ill-advised engagement with the Death Knights luckily won't cost them too much. It's a 2-2 kill split.
Yeah, but right now, the big question is this focus onto the Tahm Kench a mistake, right? Is it a good idea to really be focusing on trying to avoid this Kench getting that consume, you know, that ability to deny the damage on top of the Smolder? Yes, you can take away that one defensive piece, that one chink in the armor, right? But the big thing here is if you take down the Kench, has the Smolder gotten the opportunity to free fire this entire time? Is that actually usable for the team here? Now, unless you have the opportunity to actually just completely burst down a Kench's health bar, and not only do you have to do it once, you got to do it twice because it is still Tahm Kench. I don't know if this focus is going to be the best idea for the Death Knights.
And the item adaptations from these 2 carries for Akuma Blades, even smarter. The Zanya's Hourglass is such a powerful stop for this Nocturne combo. It's now the Akuma Blades they're looking to be aggressors. That's a key flash out of Crushing Rock, but both Hwassel and Fluke are going to have a stasis available to them as this game goes on top of that Devour bailout you've been talking about from Osnapski.
I mean, the Devour just so important here, but having that Seeker's Arm Guard on top of that, as we've mentioned again and again, it's all just going to be a matter of whether or not these carries can stay alive, whether or not they can get to the point of the game where they're fully relevant here. And Akuma, they're slowly getting past that ever so powerful mid-game moment for the Death Knights here. We didn't think that they'd manage to get here. We didn't think that they'd have this opportunity, but now another Paranoia gets procced, but is onto yet another tank.
Yeah, it's a full tank. Andy Chef even has a bounty. He is locked up by 3, should fall. Do Akuma Blades have an ability to find anything on the backside? It doesn't seem like it so far, and that's a big shutdown into Crushing Rock's hands.
Big shutdown going over to that Kaisa, but it's going to be traded for that mid-tier 2. And once again, Akuma showing off exactly why they're the first seed, why they've managed to put themselves into these positions, because every single time that one of their members on a side lane gets punished, they always have an answer in return here. The Baron not going to be getting started up soon enough, but still very much a threat available to them. Death Charge is available. The Paranoia on the other hand, not something that they have an option to them just yet. But with Tahm Kench backing, my question here is, do the Death Knights go for a YOLO Baron play, or do they just look to wait until their Nocturne can truly start to threaten this Smolder?
The real fight might just be over this next dragon, because remember, another big win con that could level the game state is Mountain Soul, which is available for the Death Knights. They didn't grab it on the first turn. You could try for it on the second turn, but they don't have that river control, and I am looking at one key ultimate that worries me for any team fight. Hwasol has his next Skies Descend, the biggest ultimate in League of Legends history that he can use to level this fight. It feels like might be around this dragon, but this is where League of Legends can be so fun. The Baron versus Dragon Soul dance, but we might just have a straight NA Ram fight onto Michael Ross. He has to use his flash to get out. Defensive paranoia. Does the turn come out from the Death Knights? A lot of key ultimates used by both sides, and everyone's going to limp away. Nobody wanting the actual fight.
Yeah, Mom did get called, and so did that Scion ultimate here, but a Baron startup on the other side as Akuma, none the wiser, says, oh shoot, we have to turn all the way over here. But just like that, Snapsky and Andy Chef all by themselves are able to stop the entirety of the Death Knights from taking that Baron.
Really smart split up there. Hwasol stays to knock down the dragon, stop the soul count, so the mid wave is in favor of Akuma Blade, so Fluke is just hammering this inhibitor turret, and the Death Knights are locked out of even getting back to their own base, except going the long way that involves losing their base structures. The inhibitor should be next to fall here. Mitsuki has to be careful as the CC starts to rain in on this Nautilus, but there's the Paranoia Shock Ball flank onto Hwasol. He does go into the stasis in time, should be able to drop the Skies Descend. The fear won't come out, and there's the shutdown for Crushing Rock. Canny is on top of Osnapsky, who has to flash away. In goes a Meta Shift, but he's all alone off to the side. It's gonna have to be the Smolder, but he's starting to lose all of his supporters, but here comes Meta Shift with a huge Cataclysm, and Fluke does not disappoint, turns a triple kill on its head, and they're gonna teleport to try and cut off the recalls. They're trying to see if Fluke could do it all on his own, flashing forward to try and play for the Penta, gets Mom back in. It's a quadra for Fluke, and Nexus turrets being hounded. This could just be the game now for Akuma Sabres. It's only left Milk and Mocha, but it's one pesky Nocturne to try and stop them all. One Nexus turret up, gets Paranoia back up, but it's the stasis through for Fluke that gets the ace down, and Akuma Blades have done step one. They're forcing a game number 3. Their perfect regular season is still alive and well.
Yeah, and just like that, Akuma managed to barely hold on through that explosive early game, that very, very strong mid game from the Death Knights composition, and they get to that one big win condition. Fluke hits 225 stacks, Elder Dragon at home comes into play, and with all the AoE in the world you could ever want, the Dragon composition comes alive.
I mean, look at those numbers, man. Smolder,
oh my Lord.
Smolder in the right scenarios is one of a kind, and Fluke might just be one of a kind player for Akuma Blades. We were a bit wrong. I was definitely a bit too fast. That mid game wasn't as controlling as we thought for the TMG Death Knights, but man, did Akuma Blades play to their strengths well enough in those fights. Just so smart the way they're playing passively until they know they have the upper hand. Enough of those cooldowns are gone. Sustained fights got Akuma Blades this win.
Yeah, the sustained fights, the focus on so many of those champions that were designed to keep Fluke alive ended up being the bane of the Death Knights there. They said, all right, well, what if we take away the frontliners like that Scion, like that Tahm Kench, like, you know, the Jarvan? But in the end, Fluke just got to free hit in so many of those fights, and Smolder, especially in a choke point, able to just do damage on damage on damage. But either way, what that is going to do damage to is the possibility of a quick 2-0. Game number 3, here we come. Don't go anywhere as we look to close off the series very, very soon.
We're getting There we go.
But I remember how I slept in your chest. I want to forget it, take a breath and leave you away, away. But it's not that easy, 'cause you make me miss you again, again. If you want, just come. If you want, just come. Don't leave me again, leave me again. If you want, just come. If you want, just come. Don't leave me again, leave me again. Leave me again. There's no time for regrets, but I remember how I slept in your chest. I want to forget it, take a breath and leave you away, away. But it's not that easy, 'cause you make me miss you again, again. If you want, just come. If you want, just come. Don't leave me again, leave me again. If you want, just come. If you want, just come. Don't leave me again, leave me again. I'm walking alone, the streets are empty. The only thing I can see is my own silhouette. I'm getting stronger, step by step. The clock is ticking, but there's no time for regrets. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe, trying to protect your soul. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above the sky. We are heroes tonight. Yeah. We are heroes tonight. trying to protect your soul.
all comes down to this one, folks. Game number 3 on the line as we see Akuma Blades with the big Game 2 comeback, leaning on that scaling factor, allowing themselves to try and stay perfect in series on the season. Game 3 on tap soon here, and well, it really feels like we've learned so much from the last couple of games, and so much of it you can kind of just throw out the window because it's just all here. This draft is going to decide it.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, it is True Minded Gaming's Death Knights that do have themselves the ability to choose that final side selection of the night here. And that last time, right, the first time at the very least, we saw that it was a matter of, all right, well, what if we play Scaling versus what if we play Exodia? And that time, Exodia won. The second time, we said, what if we play Scaling versus what if we play Exodia? That time, the Smolder won. Game number 3, my big question is, if it's another matter of Scaling versus Exodia, do you leave the Smolder open? Because that Smolder did so much work there. I mean, just having a ticking time bomb of a passive on a champion like that is disastrous when your plan is to just play that standard 5v5 Exodia comp.
Yeah, exactly. There's so much going into this game through draft, and the meta reads that we've thrown out, the series has not really even been about a lot of the meta reads. Like, as fun as Smolder has been, and we've talked a lot about him, like, he's not really a meta read right now in a lot of ways. It's still like the big bads of, like, Corki, not been seeing this series. It wasn't banned or picked in the last game, so maybe, this series is just a lot different, relies a lot more on these comfort picks, team synergies, draft capabilities, all these factoring in as we are on for game number 3 draft. The Death Knights want a shot at red side once more. They don't want that coveted B1 pick. They want to counter pick their solo lanes more than likely.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't disagree with that whatsoever. I honestly thought that the Death Knights had a very good composition going in that last game, and the way how they played that game also worked out quite beautifully. The big issue is when they started getting to that mid game, a lot of those early fights, right, they said, all right, you know what? Well, what if we just go ahead and focus on that Tom Kench, focus on that Scion, and just rid of those frontliners so Smolder can't free hit. And that worked up until a certain extent when those champions started getting tanky enough that they couldn't just burst them down in one rotation. And if you can't burst down the frontliners in one rotation, the entire time that you're spending time putting damage into those frontliners, Smolder and Aurelian Soul are free hitting the entirety of your team.
You spoke on Smolder anti and away by the Akuma Blades, so they don't want to have to deal with it. Signals to me they have a pretty confident draft plan in mind, and here we are. We're finally here. Meta picks available. Corki got left up. It's going into either Hwassel or Fluke's hands. That's how powerful this champion is right now. You can run him in either one of those slots. The answer looks like the Ahri for Michael Ross, signaling they believe the Corki will be going into the mid lane.
Yeah, it is going to be the Ahri. We could also be getting the Vi. Honestly, with these bans, I would be surprised if it wasn't DK on the other side. Okay, so it is going to be the blue side, True Minded Gaming Death Knights. So there we go. That makes so much more sense with that, Talon and Nico ban away. And there is the Silas picked up relatively early on here. I honestly not too sure how I feel about this Silas take, because, I mean, I don't doubt that Michael Ross is a solid Silas, but putting up the Silas this early on says, all right, well, you can't be taking things like the Gnar, you can't be taking things like the Alistar, but it also says that if you do opt to take these, it also says that if you do opt to take these things, right, at the very least, Silas won't have too many ultis to steal from, right? As in, like, if you show Silas early, the enemy team isn't going to be giving you those super ultra busted ultimates. But either way, the quickness is still available, so you got the one. If you watched Faker versus Chovy, you can still very much make use of the Spirit Rushes. But I don't think we're quite seeing the Faker versus Chovy matchup exactly. But either way, Silas pick early on, pretty interesting.
I believe that, you know, the logic likely behind the Sylas is Michael Ross wants the, you know, a free, when you get a counter pick on blue side available to you, it can be very valuable to take it. So Michael Ross must just love the Sylas into RE matchup, and they're comfortable throwing Crushing Rock on the Corki. Poppy locked in here as a blind. So also correction, thank you, lovely production. That is a Shen ban, not a Yone ban. Oh, there we go,
Okay.
corrected. So Poppy
All
blind,
right.
does that signal jungle to you a little bit more anti than maybe a top lane pick?
I don't know. Honestly, I do think that the Poppy can still be flexed completely, so I don't think it's actually locked into anything. And now is when we're going to be seeing something locked directly in. I do think that the Poppy does go into top lane with that pick there, but okay, there's why we needed to verify that it was a Shen ban and not a Yone ban, because there is the Yone coming in as the counter pick into that Mundo. You know, very, very strong champion here, especially with that Blade of the Ruin King into the Stride Breaker build that we've been seeing used so much there. And it's very, very difficult for Canny to actually get to a point where he can really side lane into a Yone. But at the very least, you have to put yourself in a position where you can 1v1 that Mundo. If Canny can get to level 16, then Canny will be doing just fine. So it's just a matter of who gets ahead early on. It's the same thing I've said every single time when it comes to competitive top lane. Welcome to top lane. You die once, so you die the rest of the laning phase. So it's all about that first kill. It's all about how these junglers play it.
All about the tank versus flank composition we have going on here. Mundo, Udyr, Braum playing against Rakan, Ahri, Kai'Sa, and Yone. So Akuma Blades going to have the ability to win fights with their minds, with their macro. The Death Knights are believing in the fact that they can out-sustain and lean on Crushing Rock and maybe a good Michael Ross ult steal to win them this game and this series. But once again, Anti, we've now seen both teams try this like Sylas insert where it just kind of feels a little bit lost on me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like there are teams picking up Sylas lately where I think we all got a little bit hyped up watching Faker, you know, just go crazy with the Sylas, just constantly making some really good plays. But you got to remember, this champion's hard as hell to play, hard as hell to make work, and doesn't really slot into a lot of these compositions. It's not like you've got a Gnar on the enemy team. It's not like there's an Alistar for you to take as well. It's not super slot in and play, but in the end, the big question is, are we going to be actually seeing the Sylas make a big statement, or is it going to be essentially invisible the same way we saw Quasel's Sylas in game number 1?
What a storyline it is, though, to virtually, for the Death Knights, so virtually be playing a very stylistic similar comp to the Akuma Blade side in game 1 to try and show them, hey, we can execute on this style. But all of that is left up in the air for now. The air on Summoner's Rift as we see the two sides start out. Death Knights are looking to maybe get cheeky with an invade, but more so actually stacking defensively. Now I'm going to see if they can opt to swing towards the mid lane, as we do see Quasel push pretty far up, able to retreat safely. Great defensive ward from Metashift is actually to spot out all of our friends on the top side.
Yeah, and that one preemptive ward coming in from Metashift, paying out dividends, doing so much work here, and the counter ward coming in from Akuma also paying them very, very well here. Kenny and Milk and Mocha just gonna continue to take as much of the farm away, but it's just going to be that classic vertical jungle. Nothing too crazy going on over here. They think they have the drop onto Metashift here. They are none the wiser. The Death Knight's really not going to be able to get so much out of that early side swap.
I'm really worried now for Canny as well. Mundo struggles early, and now he's completely lost lane prio into Andy Chef. Is going to be... I'm actually surprised he's not down XP. Maybe I bite my tongue on this one. They will get back to the lane in time. But this matchup is the one to watch because you mentioned it, at a certain point, Yone is going to be able to out-sustain Canny later in the game, but Yone also is much more powerful in 1v1 lane scenarios. I really feel like this is the lane that could win the game for the Akuma Blades, as we see Metashift able to trade 2 of the camps back. Still really trying to force this vertical jungle, and with Osnapski's help, should be able to.
Yeah, and Mitsuki now in a little bit of trouble, walking up pretty close.
Yep, there's the Grand Entrance knockup. They're chaining the CC together. Mitsuki has to expend the flash, so support flash down to slow Metashift's clear. As we see Milk and Mocha utilize his timing to try and get Andy Chef back behind. Goes into the Spirit form, but you gotta go back at some point, my friend, into Death's waiting arms. First blood over to Canny.
Yeah, and this is exactly what we were talking about, Slayer. This is exactly what we were warning about. Welcome to top lane in competitive play. You die once, you die the rest of the laning phase, and there's death number 1 on Andy. Now the question is, can Canny actually turn that into much of a lead? 700 plus gold for that first kill, but the big question is, what is that going to turn into on this back? Is the Mundo actually going to get a chance to snowball this one, especially with that Soul Unbound doing so much of that early damage here? Mocha still looking to try to make something happen while hovering around the area, but I doubt that it's really going to turn into too much, as with 2 champions at around half health or lower, it's honestly a struggle to see an opportunity onto this Yone once again.
Let's see, Metashift going for this mid lane gank. Charm comes out late from Hwassel, but it is well timed to force Michael Ross back. What a development in this game number 3. A first vertical jungle. You can see some of these lanes are not too word to the wiser on it. I am intrigued to see that Andy Chef even gets caught for first blood, because like you pointed out, when the Vision Wars were going down, Akuma Blades knew that Milk and Mocha was the one that was controlling both topside camps.
I mean, they knew for a fact that the Udyr was there. They knew for the fact that the Udyr had the possibility to do that, but in the end, still a little bit of myopia, just focused a little bit too hard where it didn't matter. Michael Ross focused once again on the wave.
That was so smart from Metashift. He flashes to cancel the dash from Michael Ross and gives the kill over to Hwassel. Akuma Blades back on the board here, but it's an immediate answer from the Death Knights. Andy Chef once again caught in a precarious position in a 2 versus 1. 0-2 goes the Yone.
Yeah, 0-2 goes the Yone, as the prophecy is continuing to be fulfilled here. Meanwhile, in that mid lane, another one of those things that we were concerned about, right? How much value does the Sylas actually bring to the team? Right? But until Michael Ross hits level 6, we're really not going to be able to see how much power this Sylas does actually hold. But at the very least, the dragon being taken away early, even before the grubs have a chance to spawn, spells a very, very good start for Akuma here.
First dragon, first neutral claimed by the Poppy. Gold lead in the favor of the Death Knights. Haven't seen too much from the bot side, despite how much action was down here in the last 2 games. There's a simple answer for that: Braum.
Yeah, I mean, that's the classic, right? Braum, very, very good at just denying any real sort of follow-up, and we're seeing that right there, right? I mean, Corki, very, very strong champion. Braum says, all right, well, you went in, I hit Unbreakable. We just kind of stare at each other, and you get to think about what you did in the corner over there, whether or not you are stunned up. But in the end, top lane looking great, bot lane looking frisky, but still pretty healthy health bars on both sides.
Corki, weak even in the early stages. Or sorry, still weak in the early stages, despite the fact his buffs came along on this patch. Do see a grub take coming on for Milk and Mocha as he continues to play the vertical jungle towards his strengths. Bit late for the grub answer to that first dragon, but still anybody's game. And once again, Andy Chef constantly shoving in these waves, but I'm still worried because Milk and Mocha, I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Why not just keep ganking this Yone?
Yeah, why not just continue with the ganks again and again and again? And right now, the big question is, well, because you've got an invade on your jungle meta shift, walking up a little bit close.
Scuffle for the chickens. Smite away goes to meta shift, so able to steal the big chicken. The big gold prize away from Milk and Mocha as both these teams just continue to try to be pesky playing around their junglers.
But in the end, the Udyr still manages to pull ahead with a gold lead, with a farm lead, and Crushing Rock is going to continue to farm up on this Corki, right? This Corki that we've been hyping up for such a long time, that we know is a huge threat for the entirety of this series. But just like that, we're just seeing constant trades in the bot lane, and none of them really seem to be going in Akuma's favor.
Luke was masterful in game number 1. Has that CS lead to lean on in game number 2. Or excuse me, game number 3. I basically add 1 to all my game notes I just said there. Game number 2 hero, trying to be the hero again in game number 3. As we finally see Milk and Mocha trying to pay some attention towards the spot side. Just going to look for that reset. He's got top camps go up and clear for. This is the classic early game stall out. No Drake for a bit. No more grubs to play for. Really leaning on how these lanes look. And you can see top side, Andy Chef with space. Still taking advantage of his matchup.
Yeah, I mean, even despite those early 2 kills going over, Canny still struggling a little bit in this top lane. No real way how to mitigate that Yone damage without the plated steel caps just yet. Still needs to find that opportunity to survive past this laning phase, as long as you can get past that early gold. But ooh, just barely misses out on that Q there. But the Mundo playing with fire.
It's the classic catch-22 I talk about with top lanes. Soul Unbound, or excuse me, Fate Sealed is obviously available for Andy Chef, but you don't want to pull that trigger if you know maximum dosage is available. So now Andy Chef, though he is a little bit weaker in the health department, bit of an advantage here with his ultimate available. That CC block is really powerful to allow Candy to stay in lane, and oh boy, we've seen this movie before. Milk and Mocha, what timing. Andy Chef just now was going to go for the ward. Flashes to try to get away, but a match flash makes sure that the Fate Seal does not get Andy Chef out. It's a 3rd death, and Kenny this time will claim it in favor of the Death Knights.
Yeah, the flash to cancel out the Yone ulti, just making sure that Andy has nowhere to go. And in the end, it just seems that top lane is continuing to be rough for this Yone. That should be enough gold for the first item fully completed for Canny, but the question is, are you going to be able to actually stand up against the Yone? Yone's still building up to the Bork, so still going to be able to deal with those health stacking on the Mundo, but in the end, Mitsuki still not able to make too much happen in this bot lane.
He's really tried to make sure the meta shift can't steal away all of these bot side camps from Milk and Mocha. Not too successful in that department like you talked about, but it's all about the top lane right now. Not having a full effect on the gold lead because, like we talked about, mid and AD carry particularly pretty sizable CS leads that are actually giving the Akuma Blades still the edge in the gold department.
Yeah, I mean, still managing to pull out with that gold lead, still managing to pull out with that dragon lead, and being able to pick up these first 2 dragons does something very, very crucial for Akuma's team here. It makes sure that the Death Knights are forced to fight them in 10 more minutes, right? In 5 minutes, it'll be for the soul point. In 10 minutes, it'll be for the soul. And for a mountain soul, this will be a very, very important soul to fight for. You cannot be giving up either of these dragons.
First game of the series, we have a team able to capitalize on full might power. It's going to be 6 in the hands of the Death Knights, which is a big factor, even if they're not the split-pushing team, because we've seen so many games in the league recently with the Void Mites introduced. You win 1 late-game team fight, you got double-up Mites. Might be able to just run down mid lane and win the game off of that alone.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it time and time again. We're seeing Crushing Rock dashing in towards Fluke here, but as we've also seen so much in the spot lane, it's all flash, no substance. There's just no real damage going in between either of these bot laners, as there's no real chance of lethal until you've got the junglers coming on in.
Okay, flash away. Mitsuki gonna get the Glacial Fissure down before the charm comes across, but he will be the sacrificial lamb here. Metashift picks up the kill. Great setup from Snapsky. Maybe not where you want the gold to be, but still gold into the pocket of the Akuma Blades nonetheless.
Yeah, gold is gold. Andy, on the other hand, just staying golden with this very conservative play, just trying to not get ganked for the 4th time, but either way, I mean, what can you really do?
Okay, Soul Bound back, the wave shoving away, and this camp for Milka Mocha should work out. Once again, the Fate Seal does not get the full dash away for Andy Chef, and boy, is he just setting up camp Milka Mocha for the 4th time. Able to combine for a kill onto Andy Chef, all kills for the Death Knights, onto one single player for Akuma Blades.
All of the kills onto that one player who's still only about 600 gold behind is what I would say if it wasn't for Demolish, if it wasn't for the Void Grubs, and all of a sudden this is going to turn into quite the substantial lead for the Mundo, especially because now with Mundo's access to the magical footwear, that is going to be the fully completed plated steel caps, and that takes this matchup from difficult to downright near impossible to die in.
Okay, Michael Ross finally looking to put a fight up against this Ahri. Has been out farming, but Metashift is there. Was maybe waiting on Milka Mocha with the flank. They have the Braum passive stacks up. Can they get the stun down on any of them? No, and the steel hijacked ult a bit too late for Michael Ross, so just a bit of poking and prodding for the 3v3.
Yeah, a little bit of poking and prodding, a little bit of love taps here and there. You know, some greetings going across from both sides, but in the end, nothing ventured, nothing gained, nothing too crazy happening just yet, as Metashift is once again chased off of these chickens by Mitsuki. At least this time Mitsuki has some backup, so it's not just a matter of 1v2ing directly into the enemy jungler and support, but the Braum still very, very confident.
There goes another dash in from Crushing Rock. Eats a charm. Maybe noting that he's got the full 5 power of the TMG Death Knights. It's funny, right? The biggest battleground this game has definitely been top lane, but second might actually be Raptor Pit.
Yeah, I mean, it's just been fight after fight after fight in the Raptor Pit, but here we are, yet another one of those neutral objectives going over with essentially no one contesting it. The only person in the area to contest it is the Yone, but Andy, you've been contesting basically your life this entire time, and you haven't come out on top any of those moments. It doesn't matter that you can see this, just cut your losses and leave. In the meantime, Fluke managed to kill Crushing Rock in the bot lane off the dive. Metashift does get taken down as well, but at the very least, it is going to be the first tower for Kenny, and Death Knights barely coming in clutch.
Very small nitpicky thing, but Fluke decides to opt for denying as much CS as possible from Crushing Rock over first turret gold of the game. You can see he was pausing there for every minion to go down. I'm pretty certain if he just autos the turret down, he beats Canny to the first turret take. Nonetheless, though, I highlighted it a little bit, but this is the real strength for the Akuma Blades in this early game. Those farm leads turn into more turret damage, and now, through the Death Knights, you are down your bottom and mid tier 1 turret at a very early stage.
Yeah, no tier 1s available for the Death Knights here, barring that top lane tier 1, which should be going down soon enough if Andy does opt to just stay in that top lane, and we're not going to be getting those teleport in towards this dragon. It is still just the first dragon of the game for the Death Knights, but at the very least, mountain dragons still mean quite a bit to the team with a fed Mundo and Udyr.
And we've had 3 Mountain Souls, by the way. Odds on that are pretty immaculate.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a 50-50. Either we get 3 or we don't.
I don't know about this math. I don't know if this math checks out for my days of
I don't know. I think it checks out just fine.
You know what doesn't check
mean,
out? Milk and Mocha actually makes a gank work in a lane that isn't top lane. That is a kill on to Waxel.
Yeah, and Fossil actually going to be the one checking out there, and we're going to be seeing it in the replay.
Crazy things can happen once your jungler realizes there's more than one lane. I'm kidding, Milk and Mocha. Milk and Mocha, was forced into a vertical jungle scenario that he was able to actually turn into the big power point for the Death Knights. But as you look at the gold, as you look at the dragon counts, maybe the grubs will sway it a bit, but this is about as dead even a game with clear power points on both sides. How sweet, how special in a game 3 with so much receding on the line in this regular season.
Yeah, so much here. I mean, as we've seen, right, the gold leads very, very close between these two teams. The item power spikes also incredibly close between these two teams. Kenny still managing to come out on top in this top lane fight.
It had the maximum doges waiting, so the healing's about to go even crazier. There is the Fate Unsealed, but it's just not enough. Andy Chef doesn't have enough in the pot to cook with the healing that Kenny can throw down, certainly making it look close and maybe making me eat my words, because Kenny, with the sight of Menace showing up, does not want to commit for the 1v1 outplay, and the Void Seeker max range hits allows for Fluke to jump in and find a very critical shutdown in the name of Akuma Blades.
Yeah, and Fluke with that Void Seeker looking more like a Prey Seeker. Rek'Sai ulties in and gets that execute onto the Mundo. Big pickup there for the side of Akuma, making sure that the Death Knights do not fall too far, do not get too far ahead, with that Mundo on the side lane. And the fact that Andy Chef managed to stay available, stay alive, and stay relevant in that fight for such a long time is honestly incredible.
Immaculate. I don't know. Riot, I mean, you're not watching this, but that was a one item ahead Mundo that just almost lost to an 0-4-0 Yone. So I'm not saying, I'm not trying to do their job, but
what I will say, right, is as I said, right, plated steel caps take this matchup and make it nearly unplayable when the Mundo is ahead. Kenny did not pick up plated steel caps into a team that has multiple auto attackers. Kenny instead opted for the Boots of Swiftness, which, at the very least, it says, all right, well, if I'm going to be split pushing in that side lane, I should be doing fine, right? I will be able to continually draw people up here and walk out as much as I want, but you're not going to be able to deny so much of the damage that makes Yone the real strong side lane pick that he wants to be, right? At the very least, right, if Yone does opt for a Stridebreaker and a Bork, you're going to be able to get rid of some of that, how do you call it, the slow differential, but who cares about that when you're taking so much damage you're going to end up falling out.
Wow, look at the fancy footwork from Fluke. Flashes away to create enough distance so Crushing Rock can't find the trade kill, then dashes back in, and they get themselves another shutdown on the Milk and Mocha. Kenny and the tank show up. The question becomes, is it too little too late? Michael Ross doesn't think so. Great interrupto. Snapsky just sacrificed himself for his mid laner, and it didn't end up mattering. Michael Ross and Kenny clean up 2 more kills to make sure it wasn't all for naught defending that mid lane turret.
Yeah, Snapsky just tries to save his mid laner, dies for his sins, but instead the mid laner ends up dying anyway. And in the most extended of extended fights, it does turn into the controversial one-at-a-time strat finally working out. In the meantime, Andy Chef on that side lane, able to just be that pesky mosquito, constantly dragging DK away from exactly where they want to go. You got a lot of kills, but you didn't get a lot of objectives on top of that. And that is going to be Akuma now with 5 turrets, sorry, to the 1 turret taken by the Death Knights here. And the gold lead is slowly starting to build up.
Does look like Andy Chef is going to be able to get out as well with Milk and Mocha. I thought that was a guaranteed kill. Does have to burn the ultimate, but very, very small cost for getting that valuable tier 2 turret down. Andy Chef recognizing, hey, listen, I was put way too far behind to carry in the traditional team fighting sense. I'm going to be an absolute silent menace. That's a great adaptation they're seeing in game. The one downside to Andy Chef's, escapades on the bot side, Death Knights will be able to fully neutralize this Drake win con for the Akuma Blades. We are dead even at 2 Drakes apiece.
Yeah, not only are we dead even here, the 3rd dragon, while it might just be a look at soul point there, that would turn it into a 15% resist addition here. But oh lord, we're getting a full-on fight.
Luke goes in on the backside, trying to deal the damage down onto Mitski and company. Osnapski able to healthily bounce back out. Crushing Rod, can they kite back with the show up of Milk and Mocha? Yes, they can, and they mark Fluke for death and execute him with the snap of a finger. Another spread out fight that the Death Knights are able to win, unless we have Wasi on the backside to have something to say about it. Spirit Rush, Blast Cone combination goes back over the wall for Mitski, and will find the execute, gets the Spirit Rush reset over the wall. That's some Ari mastery from Wassel to find a kill back for the Akuma Blades, but Milk and Mocha is still hunting in his own 1v1 against Metashift, and Metashift has to flash pop the Phase Rush just to survive.
Has to pop it to survive, but in the end, Metashift is going to survive, going to be able to stay alive as long as possible. Not the same that I could say for Wassel here.
Ooh, Andy Chef maybe trying to play stall, but Wassel does get jumped on, has to flash the big wall, able to do so. Another key summoner expended, but Wassel is on the wrong side of the rift of the RE combo. Not enough with the burn. We'll make sure Milk and Mocha is dragged down to the gray screen with them.
Yeah, just barely managing to be able to do that with that Airy, with that Scorch, with that burn from, I believing, the Leandries here. But in the end, Jungler going down means that Akuma are just going to hop straight on towards the Baron. Doesn't matter how many grubs you have available for yourself, if the purple worm is going to be taken right from under your nose. Now, big fight opportunity coming in for DK.
Yeah, it's a 3 versus 4. The Keeper's Verdict out to support. Andy Chef able to hold the line on one side. Michael Ross is alone in his own for 1 versus 3. Crushing Rock far too low. It's going to have to be Kenny. But the question becomes, can he even get close enough to any of these targets? Metashift will sacrifice himself unless Fluke says hell no to that. Jumps right back in, grabs himself a double kill, make it a triple. Fluke is an absolute superstar when it's needed most for the Akuma Blades. A quadra kill to secure Baron for his squad.
A quadra kill and a Baron under their belt. Akuma evening up the kill count, but far from evening up the gold. The wallets are looking heavy, and now with the ability to spend it, that is so much gold on the Kaisa. 12,000 gold on this carry, and by far the most gold in the game. And most importantly, Slayer, on top of all of that is that arm guard just sitting right there in the inventory. We saw what happened when Fluke got a tiny bit too far forward with that low range 80 carry, but now with a little bit of extra ability to stay alive, to stay safe in these fights, Fluke is going to be even more of a monster to have to focus on.
This Akuma Blaze 80 carry is trying to set a new definition for the word fluke, because this boy is not playing anywhere towards that name right now. Actually, the antithesis, an absolute clutch player in these last 2 games, trying to push his team over the hump of an 0-1 deficit to get them to 6-0 in series score. 4K gold lead, like you pointed out, Anti. Baron control. They're going to try and gobble up as much extra gold as they can, but A lot of their early game success was knocking these turrets down, and that's what scares me for the Death Knights. There is not many out of the base turrets left to claim at this point.
Yeah, really not so much left available for them. It's really just that one tier 2 left in that top lane, but as we've seen, top lane hasn't exactly been the happiest position on planet Earth for Akuma here. In the meantime, Andy could be in a little bit of trouble here.
1 versus 2 like he's been all game long, but he's winning his first 1v1. There's 2 whipped Fate Seals on both sides. Unfortunately, Andy Chef has to go back to one of his forms, able to dash away, but not far enough away from the Glacial Fissure. Max range from Mitski locks Andy Chef down, taking a whole lot of the time to finally drop a will into 1 versus 3. Problem is, Andy Chef did his job. He's the weak side top laner, even on the Yone, and the rest of the Akuma Blades are able to win their battle with the bigger top laner in Kenny. And they're going to take an inhibitor for his bounty alone. They might be able to get more with more of these Baron waves. Baron actually going to take away right there. But another inhibitor turret being hounded by Fluke. Do the Akuma Blades want to push the pressure up with a 4v4 at hand? No. They'll take their fight win inhibitor open on the bot side.
Yeah, they're not going to be pushing anything too much harder. They understand that they're already in a winning position. They understand that their #1 carry needs to stay as safe as possible. Like, Fluke, oh my goodness. I'm having a few flukes here and there trying to pronounce his tag, but either way, Fluke needs to stay in a safe spot without the ultimate available. You don't really want to be taking these really, really big fights. You don't want to be forcing out the usage of that Seeker's Arm Guard, but at the very least, with Zhonya's now on board, the Kaisa is so unbelievably powerful.
Good recognition, though, from Akuma Blades on the timing. Because the Death Knights tried to gamble to get a second inhibitor turret, they overstayed their timer on the Dragon. So you were able to, or actually, excuse me, sorry. We're both fluking our analysis right now. Because they didn't gamble to play for that second inhibitor, they're able to get the very much safer macro play of that third Mountain Drake. So even more loaded into the Akuma Blades win condition. If this game stalls out long enough, they can force a fight around this next Mountain Drake.
Yeah, it could be the big game changer here, but don't forget, Baron is up in 90 seconds. The true-minded gaming's Death Knights right now need to find a way how to avoid the Baron fight as a whole here. Kenny could be in a lot of trouble, already burning out the ultimate.
Just like that, he's back to full health, but called an anti. Very valuable ult for Kenny to have in extended fights that should not be available. It is important to mention, though, it is a level 3 maximum dosage, so might be up in time for any real scuffle.
Yeah, but one thing I also have to note here, Slayer, Kenny only has one tiny bit of defensive items, right? I mean, this is literally just health on health on health on a little bit of extra damage, and oh boy.
Quassel out of Spirit Rush charges, does not expend the flash. That is the Ahri down for 50 seconds. Death Knights looking for a bit of a window. They have Fluke hammering onto their inhibitor turrets, and my god, does Crushing Rock burn the Ignite? No, he's able to barely survive. But at the cost of the inhibitor turret, that is Andy Chef teleporting in pretty aggressively. Will have to dash back to safety. Man advantage still in the hands of the Death Knights, but they need Crushing Rock to heal back up. And with Baron up, it's the Akuma Blades with river control.
Yeah, I mean, that Keeper's Verdict was charged up, ready and poised to try to make sure that nobody had the opportunity to kill Andy Chef, but in the end, the question is, what is happening around this Baron fight?
Quassel up in 5 seconds with teleport, plenty of wards to get to if he needs to join the fight here. Andy Chef being hounded by Candy, who does have the maximum dosage back up, and here's why you build a bit of damage on the Mundo, because you can just whack them down with your briefcase. Quassel teleports on the backline with a beautiful flake, and Milk and Mocha is down. Fluke is looking for the absolute killer blow on this series. Great flash to create a bit more space. The charms come across, but Michael Ross can't finish the job. It's Akuma Blades to call game and series. Back from 0-1, they'll stay perfect in Group B.
And Fluke, diving straight into the back line on Kaisa, draws all the aggro of the entirety of the Death Knights. But in the end, with an unused Zanya's, stays alive, pushes out as much damage as possible, and buys enough time for the rest of his team to constantly put out damage. It's another one of those moments where the Death Knights focus too hard on one member, too hard on one person that they think will facilitate the winning of the fight. But in the end, they miss the forest for the trees, and the entirety of the rest of the team, now with the ability to free hit, just rips through the entirety of the Death Knights. Akuma Blades owing their final fight win to Fluke's ridiculous all-in the back.
They put so much stock in Fluke 2 games now. The Smolder game, the Kaisa game, and this guy did not disappoint, showing why he is one of the all-stars of this Vanquisher League split. Akuma Blades as a team have been touted as, titans for so many reasons, because they're 5-0. They only dropped 1 game score, but they just added another arguably more important check to that list in my mind. They just showed they can battle back when adversity comes their way to start off a series.
Oh yeah, like we said, the way how you truly test a team's mettle is figuring out what they do when they finally lose. And Akuma, after losing in the first game of the series, bounced back with absolutely terrifying efficiency, building up to a lot of those late game compositions and saying, all right, you know what, we're just gonna play for late, play for Fluke, let the man do his job, and man did the job well. Speaking of jobs done well, Andy Chef on that Yone took a lot of an early beating, a lot of early pressure, but still managed to put out more damage than anyone in the game.
That's the power of getting a whack-a-mundo all game. You just stack up your damage numbers. But I mean, Andy Chef, I talked about it a bit during the game. It's easier to make adjustments from game to game, especially you have coaches in here telling you, but to adjust his play style on this Yone because he became the target of a camp was so critical. It's something that definitely goes under the radar. He was fine dying in the side lanes later in that game, 1 versus 3, because he knew if I'm dying in a lopsided matchup, I know the rest of my team is winning on the map, and that's another just very quality trait. Just this Akuma Blades team are showing me that they are what their record shows to be, a championship contender this split.
Yeah, and in the end, that is going to be doing it for us for today. That is it for the Vanquisher League for this week, but make sure to tune into the rest of the Titan Esports broadcasts throughout the week, and also check out our sponsor, ProComps. Once again, free draft coach. Very, very helpful to anyone who does use it. What do you really have to lose, right? You're not paying any money for it. It's just a little bit of extra time, and you get a few fun little recommendations. But either way, my recommendation to you is get some water in you, get some good sleep, tune into the broadcast throughout the rest of the week, and have a nice night.